My film got kicked off Tubi. So now what? The biggest revenue source of my film is officially gone. Back in October or so, I did an interview on a podcast where we were talking about the creative process, and naturally, the subject of my first feature film came up. After the interview, the host, of course, asked where they could watch it, so I directed them to Tubi since it's free to watch on there, and it has been my biggest revenue source. However, they informed me that they did a search for my movie and they couldn't find it. I investigated a little bit further and I came across this message on its landing page on Tubi. Then I turned to Film Hub, which is the platform where I'm currently distributing my film, to see if I could get any insight. And to this day, as you can see, my film is still marked as licensed. And as you can see right here, I have a lot of revenue and then it just completely falls off, which is definitely where I noticed some issues as well. As I mentioned in the beginning, Tubi is my biggest revenue source, but it hasn't been the only revenue source throughout the lifetime of this project. Last year, I made a video about what it cost to make my first feature film Cashing Out, as well as what it made up to that date. I'm going to keep doing that same video because I think it's important to show kind of the progress of a film throughout the course of its lifetime. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I spent on my movie, how much it's made to date, and what I'm going to do in the future about this Tubi situation. To recap, between 2020 when the film launched up until 2024, the film had made $10,064.25. I wanted to give you all a reference of the year-over-year change so we had something to compare it to, and I will break each section individually once we get there. I'm not going to go over the budget and such in as much detail as the last video, so if you want to see a complete breakdown, I would recommend watching the other video, which I'll have linked at the end of this one, but I will still give a summarized overview for anybody who doesn't want to check out that video or just have a reminder of what I spent on my film. So I'm a pretty big spreadsheet nerd and I was tracking all the expenses and categorizing it and all of that, which you can kind of see right here. Again, I'm not going to break this down individually. I did do that in my last video, but I'm just going to go over quickly kind of the categories of everything that I spent so you kind of have an idea there. So I spent a grand total of $15,588.55, and that is to date. I did spend, I don't have to spend too much year over year, but I created a website recently that costs $19 a year, which I do want to make a video about that eventually. I found the cheapest way to kind of make a website for your film. So we'll get into that another day, but that is the only thing I spent this year. So for production, I spent $130 on costumes, about $1,000 on crafty, about $500 on equipment. Note on the equipment though, I did own a lot of the equipment up to that point. I made that movie, or I shot Cashing Out back in 2017, and I had been making films for over 10 years at that point. So I had just been accumulating equipment. I can't remember exactly what I bought during that time. It was probably lights or batteries or something, but I had a camera and all of that. So I didn't include that in this budget. Locations, I spent $600. I didn't really pay for any of my locations except for the big dance scene, which is about midway through the film. If you've seen it, I did have to pay for that location. About $800 on miscellaneous expenses. I don't remember exactly what those were, but just things that don't mold into one category very easily. About $50 in office supplies, which is probably just script printing. About $930 on props, which include like the poker table and costumes, or that didn't include the costumes, but just any props that I needed. The prop money, I think I spent like $100 on the prop money for that movie. So yeah, about $930. About $100 or $1,300 on travel. I believe that was for all the cast and crew, not necessarily for me because I shot local. So all in all, for production, we spent about $5,300. For post-production, spent about $550 on advertising. That was like Facebook ads and such to get people over to the movie. I spent about $500 on various apps for editing, whatever that was. Closed captions, I spent about $120. Freelancers, which ended up just being a colorist, about $1,000. I spent about $600 creating the DCPs. Now that wasn't for any I think that was for one piece of software, but that was mainly the hard drives. So if I make a movie in the future, I have all that, so that should really drive down that cost. I spent about $500 creating the Blu-rays and DVDs that I sold. I spent about $900 on festivals. I spent about $2,600 on legal fees, about $1,400 on merch, but on the merch, I think I mostly did print on demand. I'd say probably 90% was print on demand. So I didn't really spend any money unless somebody bought something, but I'm still including that in the budget because I did inevitably have to spend that money. $500 on other, I'm not sure what that is. Another $500 on shipping. So that would be shipping, like hard drives for the theaters or stuff to the cast and crew. Sales tax, I did file sales tax. I probably didn't need to do this just because my store wasn't up for very long, but I was trying to learn as much about the process as necessary. I spent about $78 on travel for post-production. I don't remember what that was for, but apparently I spent about $80 on that. And then building my website was about $350. But again, I think I have a clever way to reduce that cost dramatically in the future if I make another movie. So all in all, for post-production, I spent about $10,000, and both of those together add up to that $15,588.55. Now, on my last video too, I made like a mock budget for funsies that I want to quickly go over because like I want to put a caveat on the budget for my movie. I spent a lot of money on stuff that I didn't really need to. So I wanted to kind of get the full experience, like, doing a theatrical release, which I've talked about in previous other videos. I had a connection with a movie theater chain, so I was able to do a theatrical release. That's something most people are probably not going to do. Like if I didn't do any merch, like I wanted to create like a mock budget of like what I think I absolutely needed to spend on this movie. And then I wanted to do like a comparison to what it would have actually brought in to see if the movie would have been profitable. So for production, I kept costumes, craft services, equipment, grip, the location, miscellaneous. So I think it looks like I kept everything for production. Really couldn't change anything there. For post-production, I cut off freelancers. So I would have, colored the movie by myself. If I didn't do any DCP or theater stuff, obviously that would have saved me a lot of money. If I didn't sell Blu-rays and DVDs, that would have saved me a lot of money. If I didn't get a lawyer, that obviously would have saved me a lot of money. And if I didn't do merch or a website, which I should update for the website that I'm using now would cost like $4 a year if you kind of break it down that way. I mean, if you only have one website, like I said, mine costs $19 a year, but you can create multiple websites. It's not really a website. It's a landing page. So I guess I got to put an asterisk there, but I mean, it's basically a website, but you can create like, I think up to 10 websites on this place. So, if you have 10 different films and you all want them to have a website, that obviously drives that $19 cost down. But for the sake of argument, let's just say like, 5 years, or the $20 a year. So that's $100 plus a domain. Those are about, I can't remember how much I spent on my domains, but maybe over the course of a lifetime, I could have cut my website fees in half if I would have gone with that method. So, for the sake of argument, let's just say I would have spent $200 on websites just for fun. So for post-production, in my mock budget here of what I consider the absolute necessities, I could have spent $3,000 instead of the $10,000 that I originally spent. And I could have brought my budget down to $8,300 or about $8,400. So $8,400 is what I think it would have cost if I didn't do all of those little extra things. If you want to count the merch in that's fine. Close to 10,000, but not nearly I basically had $5,000 that I didn't need to spend. So that's pretty much it for the budget. So now I want to get over into the revenue, which is over here. So this is my column for 2025. We'll compare it to 2024. So let me do the breakdown really quick for 2024 so everybody has a reference and kind of understands what I have going on here. So I have all the different sources listed out. I have, let's see here. I don't know how many sources this is. It's not going to tell me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 different sources of revenue for the film throughout its entire lifetime. So Prime Video up to 2024 made about $1,600. In merch, I made about $2,700. I did print on demand Blu-rays on Amazon. I only made $5 on that, but I wanted to make the movie available, a physical copy available on Amazon. And this was back when they had that service available. They have since shut it down. I think they only had it up for like a couple months after my film came out, so you can't do this anymore. But it was nice to have it while it was there, but it was extremely expensive too. So I don't really recommend it. I collected about $255 in donations, and that was after I did some screenings early on. So I'll talk a little bit too about like when I had some of this money, so you kind of have a reference. So like the first year is when the bulk of this money came in. So like Prime Video, the bulk of that came in the first year. Merch, same thing. Amazon Blu-ray donations. Film Hub came later, so the majority of the money I made after, I'd say 2021, came from Film Hub. Hoosier Films, which is just another streaming distribution platform specifically for Indiana filmmakers. As you can see, I didn't really make a lot here, and I think that website has since shut down. Like I haven't seen any money come in there. I don't even know if it's up, but I made $15 at some point with it. I don't remember exactly where that money came from. I probably sold a Blu-ray or something. I don't know, but about $23.15. That would have been at the beginning too. Screenings. If you watched my last video, this is kind of a sore spot because I did get a theatrical release and I had a deal of a lifetime where I was able to make 100% of the revenue. But unfortunately, the theater chain that I partnered with, they went bankrupt and I only saw $25.59 out of the $1,912.88 that I brought in from ticket sales. So we'll see where my budget would have been if we would have actually made that money. That'll be a fun experiment. And then Vimeo, I have my own Vimeo channel, which I've done a video about. This is a great place if you don't want to go through traditional distribution and you don't, want to deal with all the hassles of QC and all that, but you want to be able to sell your film online. Vimeo on demand is a great place to do that. It's pretty much free unless your content is over an hour long. And even if it is over an hour long, it's only going to cost like $150, I think, to get 10 hours worth of uploads. So, buy once and then, you can make a few movies and not have to pay anything else. So all in all, that's where my $10,064.25 from 2025 or 2024 came in. So a reference for that number. So now let's look into 2025. And we'll look at the differences here too. So in 2025, I really only made income from 2 places, and that was Prime Video and Film Hub. Now, how am I able to make money on Prime Video still when Amazon isn't accepting submissions from filmmakers anymore? Well, I guess I got grandfathered in and they still haven't kicked me out. So, I made $42 in 2025 because they haven't kicked me off. I don't know why they haven't kicked me off, but here we are. I'm not selling merch anymore, so that's why there is a $0 balance there. I thought about doing more in the future, but I don't really think it's worth it at this point. I mean, the movie's 5 years old. If I did some sort of re-release, which I'll talk about in the future, that might be a good time to do something like that. Or if I did a Comic-Con or, something of that nature. But it's not really worth me having a store up or a print-on-demand store, to maybe sell a couple shirts every once in a while. Like, it's just not worth the hassle. Obviously, Amazon Blu-rays, they don't happen anymore. Donations, I don't get donations anymore. Film Hub is obviously where I made the most money. So as you can see here, my total income from Film Hub is $8,900 $8,590.12 compared to last year, $5,433.28. So I made about $3,200 from FilmHub. Pretty much all of that coming from Tubi. I'd say probably 98% of that is from Tubi, maybe 99%. Hoosier Films, again, I don't even think the platform's up. I don't have others. I'm obviously not screening theatrically anymore. Vimeo, unfortunately, is just not making anything. Like, I'm directing people to it, but nobody's really biting just because, there's so many other platforms that are easier to watch it on. So, that's just why that is. And then altogether, up until this point, my film has grossed $13,263.09, or I've made about 85% of the budget back. Now, I said I wanted to do a fun experiment where let's look at the screenings. So I'm going to put my screening number in there and let's see where we would be at. So I would only have to make $438.17 if I made all the money from the screenings back. So such is life. It is what it is. I can't really do anything about it, but it's good to know that I would almost be at the break-even point. And being, I only have about $2,300 left to make. If I didn't get booted off Tubi, I think I would have gotten there. I don't think I would have gotten there this year, but I think probably by the end of 27, I probably would have broke even on my movie, which would have been nice to be able to brag about. Now, we did have the mock budget on there too, so I wanted to just compare what I would have actually made on the movie if I didn't do a lot of those other extra things that I had talked about. So that's these numbers right here. So Prime Video would obviously be the same. I wouldn't have made any money on merch, so obviously that doesn't, we're not going to put that in. For Amazon Blu-ray, if I didn't do Blu-rays, nothing there. Donations would have been the same. Film Hub would have been the same, obviously. Hoosier Films would have been the same. Vimeo would have been the same. So I would have made $10,456.55, or about $3,000 less. But compared to that $8,500, let's look at again what it was real quick. Against the $8,300, $83.79 I would have made a net profit of $2,077.49. So that would have been a nice little profit there, but such is life. That is not what I decided to do. Let's just say I wanted to do like the merch. Let's throw in the merch there really quick. That'll be fun to look at. And obviously we'll have to add merch back into our budget here. So I'm going to do that really quick. Where's the merch at? Merch is about $1,400 we spent. So let's see what we would have made. Oh, we would have made more money if I would have done merch. Man, maybe I should have kept the merch in there. What about Blu-rays? Do I have Blu-rays on here? I don't think I have Blu-rays on here. Blu-rays. Oh, you know what? The merch includes Blu-rays. I'm sorry. So that would include all of the Blu-ray costs as well. So I just wouldn't have made any money from the theatrical screenings, which would have been completely okay with me. So I guess maybe maybe you should do merch. Maybe you should do Blu-rays. I think if you do Blu-rays, you should do a very small run of them. I sold probably, I want to say it was probably under 100. So if you did like 50, I think that would be a good number where you kind of, you're not overspending, and you're wanting, your local fans will be able to support you, which I think is really nice. Or maybe you did like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, do a limited run of Blu-rays through there. That's a good way to kind of pre-sell those Blu-rays. But yeah, I mean, that's the revenue I made in a nutshell. So in the actual scenario that we're in, again, our gross total here, which I will highlight green for ease. Oh, that is the worst green to freaking use. You can't even see that. $13,263.09. Okay, so that is an overview of the income and expenses. So what do I think the future holds for me now that my biggest revenue driver is completely gone? I don't know if this answer is going to shock many of you if you know who I am, but if it's your first time here, you may find it shocking that I'm probably not going to do anything about it. That answer might also anger some people who waited this long in the video for me to say that, but let me explain. I don't have any investors on this film. I paid for everything myself, so I don't owe anybody anything. It would be one thing if I had an obligation to investors or somebody who gave me money, but fortunately, I don't. That is one of the biggest reasons that I made the film for so cheap and paid for it myself. I love the freedom of not having to answer to anybody and being able to do whatever I want. There was always a rule that I heard growing up that you shouldn't pay for your own films. I've never really understood that. Paying for my own film has given me so much freedom. Like, I am someone who likes to make the best decisions possible for a situation and not make a decision because I have to make that decision. I understand that approach is not for everybody, but it's worked for me and I really prefer that freedom. Second, I don't really need to. I made more money on this film than I ever dreamed I would have. Films like mine don't make $10,000. Films like mine are lucky to break $100. It's crazy to think that I was able to make the money that I did, considering that I am a nobody and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing a lot of research and just a lot of trial and error trying to figure this whole thing out. Admittedly, I would really like to get it to a break-even point, or maybe somewhere around like making 10% would be great. You know, that's like a net profit of like $1,500 or something stupid. The S&P 500 is only supposed to make an average of 10% a year, so if my film can do that, then mission accomplished. I'm as good as the S&P 500. However, not making it back is not the end of the world. Making 85% of my budget back is absolutely crazy. And I know people who spent way more than I did and made a fraction. And last, doing nothing isn't exactly the truth. I will always continue to push my projects. I mean, that is why I created this YouTube channel in the first place. I'm just not going to do a heavy marketing campaign like I did in the beginning. I have some marketing experiments that I want to do on this channel, and of course, the movie's going to be the guinea pig for those. Regardless, I'm not going to stop saying, please check out my website, gashingoutfilm.com, so you can watch my film. See what I did there? Subtle, not so subtle marketing. And of course, there's other channels that could eventually explode too. Like, I was not expecting to have the Tubi revenue coming in forever. Like, if you go to my Film Hub page, which I want to say too, this change that they've made a lot of changes that we're going to have to talk about here soon. But this change is especially annoying just because like it only gives me 6 months of data, which I used to be able to look at the lifetime revenue. And now I can only look at 6 months for free. Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But anyway, as you can see here, my revenue completely dropped off. But for some reason, there was a spike here. So I got curious and I noticed that this Stash Movies on YouTube made $40, which was kind of insane. So I did some research and you guys are going to have to tell me what you think about this. So if you go to YouTube right now, might have to move my screen share here so you can kind of see, but let's look at Cashing Out Film. Now, I looked at my movie and I was like looking for it and I was like very confused. Like, I saw all my stuff, but the Stash had the movie up and I noticed this little gem right here. This is my movie. But fun fact, this is not the thumbnail that I created. They changed the thumbnail on their own. And I think Stash is owned by Film Hub, if I'm not mistaken. So they created this absolute garbage AI thumbnail. But here's the thing. I'll show you real quick. So we'll press play in the movie here real quick. But you'll notice, I don't know if you can see right here in the corner, I have this YouTube app on my Chrome. You could see there was a massive spike after they changed the thumbnail. Now, I don't know if it was because of the thumbnail. I don't know if they put some marketing dollars behind it, but it did see a pretty big spike because up to this point, I think there was like 300 views on it the last time I checked before I noticed that it just took off. And the majority of those views came from a very short period of time. It was towards the end of November. But yeah, so they changed the thumbnail. So either I don't know what I'm doing as far as marketing with creating posters and all of that. But yeah, I thought that was a fun fun little thing to share. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Go check out my feature film, Cashing Out, which is available right now at cashingoutfilm.com, or you can watch it on this goofy YouTube channel. And if you made it this far, I had an idea that I've been considering, so you'll have to let me know in the comments if this is something you'd want. I've been really working on an email marketing strategy at work, and it got me thinking about newsletters. I don't really think there's any newsletters for no budget filmmaking news and information like I do on this channel. Like I don't know of any. Like please let me know if you do, but like, you know, Film Hub makes like a stupid change. You know, like I don't want to make a long form video every time they do, because honestly, I'll be putting out videos all the time and I don't have time for that. But you know, like something kind of written that I can just put out quickly. I don't know. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I've thought about making shorts about stuff like that. Like I may put out a short about some recent changes from Film Hub. But you know, not just Film Hub news, but just news about the industry as a whole. Maybe I can do some condensed versions, some abridged versions of my interviews on a newsletter, or you know, if somebody wants to promote a particular project and I just want to do a short interview, you know, that could be the place to do it. But I don't know. Anyway, let me know if you'd be interested in something like that. I think it'd be cool. I don't know when I would have time to do something like that, but if there's enough interest, you know, something I would definitely consider. Anyways, if you want to see a full breakdown of my budgets, you can watch the video somewhere on screen here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.